Hey guys, Zomfox here, and it is time to do the second installment of the monthly minor news recap. This time it is of January 2024, as we have 6 stories to go over this time. These are all stories that are all pretty big deals, but none of them deserve an entire video, though I have done a short and a post on 2 of these stories. But without further ado, let's get right into it, with the first one being Max Borghi retiring. Now, he hasn't officially said he's retired, but he has informed the Battlehawks that he will not be coming back this year, and has pretty much said all of his stuff to being former running back. So it's pretty much a retirement that he didn't, fully address. But let's just take it what it is. A massive blow to the Battlehawks. Look, during the XFL free agency, so before the UFL was announced, this was their big move, getting the letter of intent for him to come here. And he's gone now. And the fact is they need him because Brian Hill was a really solid running back from this past season, and getting Max Borghi pretty much was replacing a guy with a very lateral move. As Max Borghi this past year was 5th in rushing yards, 3rd in rushing TDs, and tied for 7th in yards per rush. And their current running back room now is pretty bad. Mateo Durant was not naturally was not the number one running back, but even when he played, having only 3 yards per rush is pretty terrible. And then Kevon Latulis didn't actually play this past season. He was not in spring football this past year. But the fact is their running back room now is insanely weak, and this provides them having 2 massive problems. They had one, now they have 2. They're pretty much having to hope that AJ McCarron and Brian Hill return. If neither of these guys return, they're pretty screwed, as they've got a great offense everywhere else, but now they don't have an actual quarterback 1 or a running back 1. So this is a couple massive things for them. Losing Borghi is a huge blow for them, as now they have 2 positions of dire need on offense. And unlike quarterback, where there are serviceable guys out there, there's really not any running backs out there that are to the level of Max Borghi. Maybe get a Trey Williams or a Reggie Corbin, but even then I wouldn't say those guys were as good as Borghi was. So this is definitely a massive blow for them, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens with this. Now, this is one I did a post about, so I'm going to keep this one brief. But in a really cool thing, the St. Louis Cardinals announced that one of their theme nights for the upcoming MLB season is going to be a Battlehawks night, where if you get special tickets, you're not only going to go to the game, but you're going to get a very, very cool St. Louis Battlehawks x St. Louis Cardinals hat, which you can see has the logo of the Cardinals on it as well. It's a really cool thing that they're doing. I really love this. This is a massive way to, get the league into some more public areas in a sense. Getting it on MLB is a big deal. The USFL did this pretty well with stuff like the Detroit Pistons this past season or the Memphis Grizzlies, but this is taking that to a whole nother level. This is having an actual theme night dedicated to them, and considering this is during the season, April 22nd, this is going to put a lot of publicity into the league, especially in the St. Louis area, to continue having that insane support for the Battlehawks. So while it does suck that they're losing Max Borghi, they do have a really cool thing coming, and it seems that everyone agrees this is a really cool move. Now, the next one is going to be the Panthers have gotten a new offensive and defensive coordinator. Their new offensive coordinator is going to be Marcel Bellefoy, and he's been a head coach, still is. So how everyone made a big deal about Skip Holtz? Well, Marcel actually was and still is the head coach of the Ottawa GGs. They're, a Canadian football team in college, a collegiate Canada football team is the easiest way to describe it. What he has been doing in the USFL was being the wide receivers coach of the Philadelphia Stars. Now, it just so happens that the Panthers drafted 4 wide receivers that were on the Stars and 9 total offensive players from the Stars. So getting the wide receiver coach from the Stars, who also has head coaching experience, and putting him at OC on the team is a really smart move. This is a really good one. Now, the defensive line coach, Colin Bauer, is now being promoted to the DC. He helped make Breeland Speaks into the monster he was this past season. Now, Marcel is definitely the bigger hire in a sense that he's going to fit really well with this team and going to help out the offense a lot, especially since Nolan is a defensive guy. DC isn't as big a deal as the offensive coordinator. This is definitely a pretty big deal, as this team has fully changed both coordinators, so we'll see how this works. Now, the next one is one I did a YouTube short about, so I'll keep this one quick as well, and that's going to be that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is now a board of director member for TKO Group Holdings, the group that owns both the UFC and WWE. Now, along with that, he now officially owns The Rock, so he is, now can officially be called Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wherever he goes. But the big thing is that he will be receiving over $30 million of TKO stocks over the next couple of years. And considering how big WWE and UFC are and how much bigger they're going to get, this is going to be a decent amount of money to get in. Now, this is a really massive deal considering the fact that this pretty much, for very simple reasons. Number one is that one of your owners is now getting a ton more money. The big deal was that the XFL lost, it's $40 million this past season. But now you have an owner who in the next couple of years is going to be getting $30 million plus, considering stocks can go up and down, but the odds of them going down are pretty slim. So you're getting some massive money in that regard. And he is on the board of directors for TKO Group Holdings. Now, this might not do anything now, but hey, in the future, the UFL could become a part of this in a sense, as TKO does have, the UFC and WWE. Who knows? Or Rock could just get some deals done, just like how the USFL did have the Detroit deal to see the New Day come out all the time and Big E for the Panthers. So we could see some cool stuff with this. This is definitely a really good move for the UFL, even though it isn't directly for the UFL. And then speaking about The Rock is also going to be the Grand Marshal at this year's Daytona 500. This is naturally this is a decent deal as long as they actually announce him as being, the UFL co-owner Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, this is what I think Dwayne is best at for this league. I said it before, he should not take the focus away from the football during the season, which is what he did for a decent amount of it last season, whether it be the documentary, whether it be showing up at the games or the merchandise. But him being a public figure that gets people's eyes onto the league, that's what he's best at for this league. So this move and the last one are both really good for that aspect. So these are a couple good things. Now we have the last one, and this is arguably the biggest one because this is the one no one saw coming. The Houston Roughnecks released Kenji Bahar. Straight up released him. Kenji Bahar had been there and been their quarterback for 2 seasons. Now, he wasn't the guy the first year. It was Clayton Thorson, but he did play multiple games. But this past season, he was the guy, and now he's been released. You're talking about the guy who was top 5 in both passing yards and TDs, was just outside of it in completion percentage, and was top 10 in passer rating, despite having 2 really terrible games that pretty much dragged that down. And you signed Reed Sinnett over him. Reed is the guy that they signed right after they released Bahar, and Reed only played 1 game for the Brahmas this past season, where, granted, it's only 1 game, and in that 1 game he looked passable. He didn't throw it a ton, only 19 attempts, but he did have a pick, but he did have a TD, a 76 rating's decent. It's just the fact that you're getting essentially a guy that's played very minimal spring football and 2 guys who are spring football unknowns. So it's a very weird decision. I mean, Bahar is a guy that definitely is not in the elite quarterback room or of the UFL. He's not a Jamar Smith. He's not an Alex Magoo. He's not if he comes back, an AJ McCarron. But he's a guy that could lead a team to a championship. He is good enough to do that. So this is a pretty ballsy move. You're talking about your quarterback that you just decide to let go. We'll see how this one works out. This is definitely a very, very risky one that might end up biting them in the butt in the future, as at the moment, there's a very real argument that now the Roughnecks have overtaken the Battlehawks for the weakest QB room, with the sole argument being that the Battlehawks, Nick Tiano, has played a full game and threw more than Sinnett did, but granted, Sinnett looked better than... It's close. It's still a pretty massive shock that a lot of people still are just trying to wrap their head around it. We'll see how it works out, but I'll pretty much do it. So I'll do it for the minor monthly news recap. There's a couple other things. There was the Chad Ochocinco thing, which I don't know how true it is. I kind of put a poll on just to ask what you guys thought. We'll see if that ends up actually being anything. And then a couple other things. But this is pretty much all the major minor stuff that actually has a true effect on the league, aside from, just a crackpot, imagine if Ochocinco joins. Let me know what you think the biggest story of all this is, or what your thoughts are on any of these things. And as always, guys, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We're getting close to 500 subscribers to do the Q&A. And again, as I said, if we hit 500 subscribers before the season starts, I will add something to the 1,000 subscriber giveaway we already have going. As always, guys, have a great night.